is from Herkenhorfers.
It's the Sports Cubicle.
A very happy Thanksgiving to each and every one of you joining us here on the Sports Cubicle on WCPT 820 AM, HeartlandSignal.com, and on YouTube at the Sports Cubicle. I'm your host, Mike Mercado, the marvelous one, Dan Marver, Devin Tingle, Paul Shivari, the lovely Lady B behind the glass. And make sure you guys stay tuned to everything happening here on WCPT on Friday to get your weekend started. Tomorrow on Chew's Views with Richard Chew. Richard will be back in studio with guest Karen Byrne of the True Blue Politics Podcast, UIC historian Kevin Schultz, and Quentin Lucas, mayor of Kansas City, Missouri. That's Chew's Views weekdays from 6 to 8 a.m. Central on WCPT 820 a.m. The Heartland Signal website. Tune in, YouTube, and on Facebook. We can't forget, tomorrow on Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez, we'll be joined by political cartoonist Scott Stantis. Oh my goodness, that is a nice pick-me-up.
I was going to say, Scott.
Yeah, that is really fun. Driving It Home with Patty Vasquez, weekdays from 5 to 7 p.m. Central on WCPT 820 a.m., the Heartland Signal website. Tune in, YouTube, and Facebook as well. And a busy Saturday as Tori Ryder joins the Edwin Eisen Draft Show as the host. It will be It's the Democracy Stupid, Saturdays from 1 to 4 p.m. Central on WCPT 820 a.m., HeartlandSignal.com, and tune in. A whole lot more for you to feast on after Thanksgiving dinner. And you know who was feasting? The United States government, the FBI, all the government institutes, as they rounded up a bunch of big-time NBA names, coaches, players, in what was and has been one of the big stories in the NBA, in the sports world, and that is gambling scandals. This comes to us from ESPN. Portland Trail Blazers coach and basketball Hall of Famer Chauncey Billups pleaded not guilty on Monday to charges he profited from rigged poker games involving several mafia figures and at least one other former NBA player. The five-time All-Star, who won a championship with the Detroit Pistons, was arraigned in a federal court in New York City on money laundering conspiracy and wire fraud conspiracy charges, both of which carry a maximum punishment of 20 years in prison. Some of Billups' co-defendants are also charged with running an illegal gambling business and engaging in extortion conspiracies. Chris Haywood, his attorney, has said Billups is a, quote, man of integrity and denies the charges. Quote, to believe that Chauncey Billups did what the federal government is accusing him of it is to believe that he would risk his Hall of Fame legacy, his reputation, and his freedom. He would not jeopardize with those things for anything, let alone a card game, Haywood said after Billups appeared in a federal court in Portland, Oregon, when prosecutors first announced the indictment on October 23rd. Billups was arguably the most prominent name among more than 30 charged in last month's sprawling federal takedown of illegal gambling operations linked to professional sports. The other defendants were also expected to appear in the Brooklyn court for Monday's proceedings, in which a judge, prosecutors, defense lawyers will likely discuss next steps in the case. Prosecutors say the 49-year-old Denver native, who was inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame, was involved in a scheme to rig mafia-backed illegal poker games in Manhattan, Las Vegas, Miami, and Hamptons. But it wasn't just Chauncey. Former NBA player and assistant coach Damon Jones was also nabbed in that alleged scheme, which prosecutors say utilized a range of sophisticated technology that allowed the gambling to be rigged, such as altered card shuffling machines, hidden cameras in poker chip trays, special sunglasses, and even X-ray equipment built into the table to read cards. And there's more in this article you guys have to check out, where they essentially say they use Chauncey as a, quote, face card to bring in unsuspecting players and celebrities. Prosecutors say Billups, who earned about $106 million from his playing days, received a portion of the ill-gotten gains. After one rigged game in October 2020, for example, they say he was directly wired $50,000. And just some names that have also been indicted or have been accused in this accusation. Oh, the Gambinos. and the Genovese and the Bonos. Is that how you say the Bonanno mob families?
We'll go with that.
The Savannah Bananos.
Just love it. He said it in case you heard it. That is the entire story. You guys can read a lot more about the gambling scandal in the NBA. So this is also on top of the Terry Rozier thing, the Porter thing. This is something we've seen in Major League Baseball. This is a rampant thing that is happening around major sports. But the issue with all of it, the Pandora's box, the leagues are in bed with these gambling companies. So I don't know where we even start with this conversation when it comes to a solution, because we know what the problem is, and guess what? That problem's not getting solved anytime soon. Marver?
Not anytime soon. I mean, obviously, you can go back a ways. You look at the baseball issues with Pete Rose and such, and gambling is a little bit more free and easy and freewheeling. I mean, there's in the arenas you can gamble now. It's incredible how extensive this has become, and Billups makes all that money as a player, and so he gets wired $50,000. That's like pocket change if he made $106 million during his playing days. I guess it's just for the thrill of it. So, innocent until proven guilty, but it's not shocking. The worst part, of course, would be some of the stuff that's going on with players betting on games, perhaps that they're playing in. I think that's even worse in a way, particularly if they're betting to lose, God forbid. But, obviously people are involved, this equipment is quite sophisticated with special sunglasses. I'd like to get a hold of those myself. So, it will be interesting to see what happens with this case, but it's not shocking with all the gambling going on nowadays.
Devin?
Marver brings up a very interesting point here, as we do remember also Pete Rose, but also the Ohtani thing that was also earlier this year here. But my big thing is this just the ones that are doing it, or is this the ones that are getting caught? Because I have a feeling this is, like Marver said, it's going on more than we think it is right now. And it very does make me wonder, what are the rules here? Because, I mean, you can say, you can't bet on the games that you're playing, but also what if you got a friend who's on another team, and you're like, hey, I bet some money here. You want a little bit of the pot there? But it does kind of make me wonder, these athletes that are making millions of dollars playing this game, what is it just for the thrill, like Marver said, for the gambling? What's making them want to do this, especially when they're playing?
So it's something that I know Paul and I have talked about over the years, because it's something you see a lot in baseball, but you see it a lot in which the athlete comes from harsh beginnings from poverty. If, for example, let's use steroids, right? We always hear, why would you risk a contract for $50 million to take steroids? Imagine coming from a place where you didn't have cleats, didn't even have gym shoes. You just had your feet, a stick, and a stone. And it's 2020. That is what a lot of people in Venezuela and Guatemala and Puerto Rico and Dominican Republic have to deal with.
I don't want to know the deep, dark truth, Mercado. I just want to see my favorite ball player sock a few dingers.
So, dingers. And the problem is, when then you are offered to be in one of these clubs that the Marlins used to have or the Cubs have in these areas, and somebody says, you take this and you might get to Major League Baseball. You might get to go to a place where there's running water after you play baseball. They will do anything. So when they are making $50 million and you wonder why, how do they do that? Why do they do that? Because they will do anything it takes to get out of it. Now you start talking about this type of gambling. It becomes, maybe you're not impoverished, but you come from, I need to make money, or I like to make money by any means necessary. And that's a mindset that athletes have that haven't been, at the very least, haven't tried to learn responsibility when it comes to money, or responsibility not to get caught in something dumb. So let's talk a little bit about that. Getting them in trouble. What should be the standing rules? If you open Pandora's box, the solution's simple. You can bet on anything except the game you're playing in. That's it. The only solution can be you cannot bet on the game you play in. Everything is carte blanche. Enjoy yourself. Even if you're, let's say, LaMelo, and you're not going to bet on your Hornets, but I can bet on Lonzo. So be it.
And that's a great example because that's a brother insider information. But we know all these guys are friends around the league.
Begin with.
Yeah. So I mean, that wouldn't fly either, because it would be like, oh, I got some insider info about this game, even though I'm not playing in it.
So even the most basic answer, where it's just like, let them do whatever minus their own game, there is still some type of barrier in which you could say that was rigged. And that's where we're at right now. But you can't go backwards, because that's what they could do right outside of Wrigley Field. Make a bet. Paul, what do you think about all this? Because I think you and I covering baseball, especially you, it's just part of it where I'm going to make what I can, and sometimes it's just what I can do.
Yeah, well, why do these athletes, why would you bet on sports when you're already making that much money? It's because Charlie Comiskey is going to make you pay to launder your own uniforms. No, I'm joking. The Cleveland Guardians, I thought, was a great example with Emmanuel Clase,
Yes.
and then I think there was another pitcher on that team, and they both got caught. I think it was like Clase was upset that he had a strikeout.
It was
And
like
it's
first
why would a
pitch.
guy? Why would a guy be upset? And it was because they're betting like prop bets on the over under on strikeouts, or the sixth pitch will be a strike instead of a ball or something like that. And I think it was like, or it'll be a ball instead of a strike. And it was like he threw it outside, and he was upset that the guy actually like chipped at it, and it counted as a strike. It's that sort of stuff. Prop bets got to be, like now further under the microscope. Like, do we see any trends that are suspicious? And I know that's been something that's been kind of flagged for, why is this happening? We need to research this. We need to talk and investigate and all that. So, we legalized betting, I think, before we looked at what the problems were going to be. But I think even if you looked at what all the problems are going to be, there's always going to be people that have skin in the game. There's always going to be mob influence. We can't discount that either. How many people are coerced into this because there is the mob influencing games on the outside, regardless of the legal or how illegal gambling is on the side. So, and it doesn't help either that, when it's like the Shohei Ohtani or Emmanuel Clase or Chauncey Billups, and it's like, oh gosh, how did it get this bad? We're going to talk about it on the DraftKings post-game show coming up, or the BetKings
BetMGM.
BetMGM. The fact that nowadays you go to the ballpark and you see legalized gambling in big advertisements through the stadium, how different that must be. It's like, a kid nowadays going to a game would see like, a cigarette advertisement and be like, what? Oh, unbelievable. But that was a common thing back in the day. Could you imagine transplanting someone that used to see the Chesterfield signs out in center field, and then they, now come to this day and age and they see DraftKings and BetMGM and all that sort of stuff?
But I do want to add on to that, Paul, just because of the American Association. You can now gamble at the stadiums there. They have the FanDuel sports tables there. So it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm. And it's going to stay where it's at, because it's not like any of these companies are going to get back any of the money. But it also, you talk about we didn't take time to see what gambling would do. The sports didn't. The minute that they first dipped their toe in, they saw, oh, we can make this much money, just like they did with China, just like what they're doing with Saudi Arabia and Riyadh season. When they have an avenue in which they can now funnel in a whole lot of cash, that's what they're going to do. And the issue with the prop betting is it's fun for everyone. It's easy for anybody to understand, not necessarily over-unders or what the money line is, but I can understand, oh, that guy had 3 rebounds. That guy had 4 rebounds. How do you regulate that? These sport leagues already, these entities already do commission other organizations to monitor waves, and these bets go back and forth. And one of the big ones was in the UFC recently. They took a fight out of the card because it swung too much. And it swung, I think, one way specifically for like submission in the first round.
But they took the fight
They
off
took
the
the
card?
fight off the card because they got flagged for it. They were made aware that was under investigation.
Because
now.
I would think that it would just be, okay, all bets are off. Like the card still remains, but now there's going to be no action on this bet.
Well, the issue becomes the FBI needs to talk to those people, because what if it's a ring? So you got to take them out. So that's what ended up happening is they got flagged, the fighters got notified, and there you are. So that's where we're at right now. It's not like these leagues don't have people trying to police this, but it's just so rampant. And let's not forget that, like, from Bill Russell all the way to Michael Jordan, these guys weren't making bets, that Walter Payton wasn't making bets with Mongo. You know what I mean? Like, you go down the list, there's always been big poker games. There's always been big-time gambling. The difference is now, if we're going to do it, people want their cut of the cash, if you will. You're not going to make $50,000 without Uncle Sam getting his piece of it. And that's what this also comes down to, is they can't tax it.
Let's be real here. We all know that Michael Jordan was not gambling. He played baseball because he wanted to support his dad's wishes until Bugs Bunny talked him out of it.
So why don't we take a quick call? We have, I believe it's Paul who is joining us on this Thanksgiving as we get ready for hour number 3 in just a few minutes. Paul, thank you for joining us on this Thanksgiving on the Sports Cubicle here on WCPT. How you doing?
Hey, happy Thanksgiving, guys. Well, I was listening to the earlier discussion about Trump, and I was just thinking about the controversy about transgender athletes, and then all this about money. And I wonder in the future, in the next 10 to 15 years, that, and also because you're talking about the Savannah Bananas, that amateur, or let's call it, Class B and Class C professional sports, which would be kind of amateur, but regular folks who have jobs playing and maybe get paid a little bit, but that would be not only amateur and even co-ed, because people, when you have billion-dollar players, that's got to be supported somehow. And when you think about it, who can afford to take your wife and your 2 kids to a ball game, any kind of ball game? I mean, and I think about, we can't relate to the athletes anymore. Okay, I come from the era, I grew up in Detroit, when the Detroit Tigers and the Detroit Lions and the Detroit Red Wings were people from Michigan. And, I mean, the 68 lineup of the Detroit Tigers, Al Kaline, Jim Northrup, Norm Cash, Willie Horton, Mickey Lolich, Don Burt, Bill Freehan. These were all guys from Michigan and the Detroit area. Don Wirt and Wayne Walker from the Detroit Lions lived in my little starter middle-class neighborhood. They made a little more than my parents did. My parents were starting out. My mom was a nurse. My father was a school teacher. But yeah, those guys lived in the bigger houses in the neighborhood. But my brother in high school was a kicker, and he'd run into Wayne Walker out there practicing his kicking. Those are the days my brother used to write letters to the Packers place kicker Don Chandler, and Don Chandler would write back to him. It was like, so people really want to be kind of groupies of the team and say, yeah, I know these people, and we go see them play. That's what's fun about rooting. I think there's so much disconnectedness from the athletes nowadays are just the billionaire class. And I mean, when I hear things like Alex Rodriguez say, I own 150,000 doorknobs, I was like, well, good for you. I'm glad you're successful. And what are you doing for anybody? Nothing. You're charging rents and owning all the houses in a whole state practically. So I think that amateur sports and even co-ed sports would be exciting for people. I mean, because when you think about it, even concerts, it's gotten so outrageously expensive. I'll just go hear some. I'd rather go to some club and hear some blues or something like that. It doesn't have to be the big deal that it used to be, because that era is over. I just think it is. That's kind of my take on it.
No, I really appreciate it, Paul. I think there's a lot to digest, because there's a little bit of everything in there that is what's good, bad, and what is kind of the major story of sports and entertainment, anything that's just extracurricular in people's life right now in 2025. Like, first of all, when it comes to athletes and what they get paid, just, over the last 11 years, the NFL has made just over $100 billion on TV deals. You look at what happens to some of these players' bodies, the CTE, the longevity in which they can make money. I always make the money when you can, how you can. If somebody wants to pay you $20 million to be a running back for the NFL, who am I to tell you not to? And then who am I to tell you how to react with the public, how to be, at least as long as you're not a menace to society, you don't have to be a hero like Charles Barkley said. It'd be nice if I don't have to rely on the fullback of the Bears, and I can rely on all the other billionaires who own some of these teams to give some money back, to give some jobs, for there to be some equity in today's economy. But that's not the world we live in. But I do agree with you. The opportunity of, here on our show, when we cover the Dogs, or we cover any of these other affiliated baseball teams, that's the kind of entertainment that, if you don't want to go to Wrigley Field, go to Soldier Field. You can do that. There are outlets out there. It's what makes sports great, regional, local sports great, is that you can support and root for a team that is grassroots. But it's also okay to go to the United Center to watch Giannis versus Matas. And it's also okay that Giannis gets paid a lot of money because he brings in a lot of money. That shouldn't affect how you, and I'm not speaking for you, but at least for me, how you should feel about it being a sports fan. It may make you feel icky, but they're earning their cash. The real question is, why do we as sports fans go so fast to players' wallets, but we don't ask, why isn't my wallet more full? Giannis doesn't pay me. The company I work for does. If I have a union job or I have a government job, why aren't I getting paid more? I'm a teacher. Why don't I get taken care of more? I'm a nurse. Why don't they respect me more? That's not a question because Colin Kaepernick did something or because Taylor Swift's concert costs X amount of money. That is just what's used to show you as a be angry at them, ignore this. And sports is supposed to be the one thing where you earn what you get. At least that's my thoughts. Really fast, guys. We got a minute or two left, but I mean, that's kind of my thing is they've earned the right for that contract. And if somebody wants to pay it, hell, I would take it. Dev?
Definitely the NFL, as we see guys' bodies just getting battered left and right here. And of course, NFL doing their damnedest to, try to screw those guys out of as much money as possible, as we talked about with running backs a couple years ago. It's definitely those things. Yes, where I do see baseball is the biggest problem with some of those contracts, and Paul and I will be blue in the face arguing about that one there. That's a little bit different story. But again, some of these athletes, they get injured and can never play again. And here's the thing. If you got that $1 million contract, you make enough smart investments, it's 10-0 Packers. Mercado, that's what you're wondering. But yeah, if you can invest that money, if your career ends at a young age, you're going to be set for a while.
Marvin, before we head out, any kind of thoughts on that? Just the cost and the money and the disconnect fans have with athletes, even though it's the owners with the billions.
I mean, it's amazing. I'm waiting for the high school athletes to be paid, and I still can't get over the amount of money that college athletes are paid. It's it's unbelievable. In fact, there's stories now where a mid-major is trying to keep a player that gets offered $1 million, and of course they go, and they weren't going to go because they had some allegiance to their original school, but then they hire an agent. These kids have agents too. It's insane. I mean, I thought at first it's not enough that they have their tuition paid for, like at a place like Northwestern, like Boo Boo, he was there 5 years, so was that $1 million just in tuition? It just changed my allegiance to college. I mean, because the teams, tonight you got Duke, Calipari, and Shire. I wonder how much their players are being paid, the ones that are playing United Center. And by the way, make sure you bring something to keep you awake, because that's at 7 and the Northwestern game is afterwards, starting at 9:30. So it's crazy. But as a big college fan, I understand the pro players, but now that it's gone to college, it's irksome, actually.
Paulie, I know we only have a minute left, but I think you agree with me, right? Like, at the very least, college and high school players, if they're going to get paid, at least they're doing it, and at least they get paid. If Ohio State's making that much money off of a college student, get paid, right?
What was the NHSA? Is that what oversees? What are they going to be like negotiating NILs? But to caller Paul's point, it used to be like the allegiance to the players, because you were rooting for the home team because they represented. It wasn't just the laundry. It was like they were from your area, represented your area, worked in the off season in your area. I thought that's where he was going to go with it. Was all these guys are from Detroit and were working with the auto workers in the off season, because there was that.
Yeah, that was the thing.
Like Jerry Manuel in like 1977 in the off season is working on like an assembly line in Detroit. So it's like we're not too far from that era, but now these guys are completely separate. They're all rich, and then you look at college, like no allegiance to anybody because they leave on like the transfer portal. So it's like, in addition to not having any connection to them, we also place them on a pedestal. So they are rock stars to us, compared to maybe where they were back in the day.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it always goes to society, right? Like the Gladiators and all these people were put up on a high standard if they kept winning games and they brought in a bunch of money. The quarterback at Michigan and Ohio State, speaking of Ohio State, Jerry Riles coming up at the 1 o'clock hour in just a little bit. But it just goes to show, I think, if the money is being made, everybody should get made some money. And I think the country could go for that, right? We can all use a little bit of cheddar, but we can use a little bit more of the Sports Cubicle. We're down to the final hour on this special Thanksgiving edition of the Sports Cubicle here on WCPT 820 AM, HeartlandSignal.com, and of course on YouTube at the Sports Cubicle. He's Paul Shivari. He's Devin Tingo. He's the marvelous one, Dan Marver. She's the lovely Lady B. I'm your host, Mike Mercado.